Welcome to Lore of the Lost, where we uncover stories from the past steeped in truth and historical accuracy. Get unheard of perspectives and discover what life was really like during these times. Listen to the boring history as you drift off into another world. I am George Lancaster, your speaker tonight, and please let me hear where you're listening from and what time it is for you in the comments. Now listen along as we venture into the cold mists of 9th century Scandinavia, where the longships cut through dark waters and entire communities lived by the rhythm of raid and harvest. The year is 1847, and in a fjord settlement along the Norwegian coast, Gunnar Eriksson awakens before dawn in his timber longhouse. At 28 winters old, he has already sailed on 7 raiding expeditions across the North Sea to the monasteries and coastal towns of England and Ireland. His calloused hands bear the permanent stains of salt water and iron, while scars along his forearms tell stories of shield walls and desperate battles fought on foreign shores. This morning, like every morning during the raiding season, begins with the careful inspection of weapons and the quiet prayers to Odin and Thor that might ensure his return to these familiar wooden walls and the warmth of his hearth. Gunnar's wife Astrid stirs the embers in the central fire pit, her movements practiced and efficient in the pre-dawn darkness. The longhouse stretches 40 feet in length, its walls built from overlapping oak planks sealed with tar and moss. Animal hides hang from wooden beams, while carved posts depicting intertwined serpents and ravens support the turf roof above. The air carries the permanent scent of wood smoke, dried fish, and the sweet hay used to feed their livestock during the harsh winter months. Astrid tends not only to their own hearth, but to the elderly thralls who sleep near the walls, their labor having earned them a place of relative comfort in their old age within the household's protection. Their 3 children sleep on raised platforms covered with wool blankets and fur pelts, traded from hunters in the northern mountains. 8-year-old Erik already shows promise with a wooden practice sword, while 6-year-old Ingrid helps her mother with the intricate tablet weaving that produces the narrow bands used to trim clothing and secure belongings. The youngest, 4-year-old Magnus, delights in carving simple figures from soft pine wood, his small fingers already learning the patience required for the detailed craftsmanship that defines their culture. The family's wealth, measured in silver arm rings and livestock rather than coined money, allows them to maintain this comfortable household with its collection of iron tools, bronze brooches, and the precious glass beads that Astrid wears on feast days. The settlement awakens gradually as smoke begins rising from neighboring longhouses scattered along the protected inlet. Gunnar steps outside into the crisp morning air, his breath forming clouds as he surveys the familiar landscape of terraced fields carved from the hillsides and the wooden jetties where their ships rest like sleeping sea beasts. The community of roughly 200 souls depends entirely on the combination of agriculture, animal husbandry, and the wealth brought back from raiding expeditions. Without the silver, iron, and slaves captured during summer voyages, the harsh northern climate would make survival nearly impossible for such a concentrated population. The fjord provides protection from storms and enemies alike, while the surrounding forests offer timber for shipbuilding and fuel for the long winter months. Gunnar makes his way to the shore, where his ship, the Wave Strider, sits beached on wooden rollers beside 17 other vessels of varying sizes. The longship measures 72 feet from stem to stern, its shallow draft allowing navigation up rivers that larger vessels cannot enter. 32 oar holes line each side, while the single square sail, woven from wool and reinforced with leather strips, can catch even the lightest wind. The ship's construction represents months of skilled labor by the community's master shipwright, who shaped each oak plank using only hand tools and generations of inherited knowledge. Iron rivets hold the overlapping strakes together, while the flexible construction allows the vessel to ride over waves rather than fighting through them, making it ideally suited for both coastal raiding and open ocean voyages. The crew assembles as the sun climbs above the eastern mountains, 32 men ranging in age from 16 to 55. Each warrior carries his own weapons and supplies, understanding that success depends on individual preparation as much as collective courage. Gunnar's own kit includes a pattern-welded sword inherited from his father, a round wooden shield covered with leather and reinforced with iron, a a long-handled battle axe, and a seax knife that serves both as weapon and tool. His mail shirt, painstakingly crafted from thousands of interlocked iron rings, represents a fortune in metal and labor that few can afford. The byrnie's weight distributes evenly across his shoulders, the familiar pressure providing comfort rather than burden after years of wearing it during voyages and battles. Their target lies 3 days sailing to the west, a monastery on the Northumbrian coast that previous raids have left partially rebuilt and supposedly well-stocked with silver church plate and illuminated manuscripts. The monks' dedication to their god makes them predictably reluctant to abandon their holy sites, ensuring that wealth continues to accumulate in these isolated religious communities. Intelligence gathered from earlier expeditions and conversations with other raiding crews suggests the monastery now houses nearly 40 monks and maintains extensive workshops for copying religious texts, metalworking, and brewing. Such establishments represent perfect targets for Viking raiders, combining portable wealth with minimal military resistance and locations accessible to shallow draft longships that can approach directly from the sea. The wave strider slides down the beach rollers and into the dark water as the crew takes their positions at the oars. Gunnar stands at the steering oar, feeling the ship respond to his guidance as they navigate between the rocky outcroppings that guard the fjord's entrance. The rhythm of rowing establishes itself naturally, 32 oars moving in perfect synchronization as they pull away from the familiar coastline. Behind them, wives and children wave from the shore, understanding that some of these men may never return from this voyage. The sea claims Viking warriors as readily as enemy weapons, and every departure carries the weight of potential permanent farewell. Yet this risk represents the foundation of their entire way of life, the dangerous gamble that enables their community's prosperity and survival. Once beyond the coastal waters, the crew raises the great woolen sail, its red and white stripes catching the favorable wind that will carry them southwest toward their destination. The ship transforms from a rowing vessel into a sailing craft, the mast creaking as it takes the strain while the hull cuts through the swells with remarkable speed. Gunnar adjusts their course using landmarks visible along the distant shore. His navigation skills honed through years of experience, reading wind patterns, wave formations, and the subtle signs that indicate proximity to land. The crew settles into the routine of a long voyage, some men sleeping while others maintain watch, their shared rations of dried fish, hard bread, and sour ale providing sustenance for the journey ahead. The second day brings rougher seas and the constant spray that soaks through even the best wool clothing, leaving the crew damp and cold despite the summer season. They take turns bailing water from the bilge using leather buckets, the endless task that keeps their vessel afloat during extended voyages. Conversation flows between stories of previous raids, speculation about their current target's defenses, and the casual discussion of family matters that connects these warriors to their distant homes. Olaf the Stout recounts his grandfather's participation in the Great Raid on Lindisfarne 60 years earlier, while young Bjorn listens intently to descriptions of the monastery's layout provided by veterans of last year's expedition. The shared knowledge passes between generations through such storytelling, preserving tactical information alongside cultural traditions. Their navigation proves accurate as the English coast appears on the third morning, the familiar outline of headlands and river mouths confirming their position. Gunnar guides the wave strider into a sheltered cove several miles from their target, the ship's shallow draft allowing them to beach on the sandy shore without difficulty. The crew quickly unloads their weapons and supplies, then drags the vessel above the high tide line and conceals it behind a screen of cut branches. Such precautions ensure their means of escape remains secure, understanding that retreat often proves as crucial as attack in successful raiding. The longship represents not merely transportation, but their lifeline back to the familiar fjords of home, making its protection a matter of survival for every man in the crew. The monastery sits 2 miles inland, connected to the sea by a well-maintained Roman road that facilitates the transport of goods and pilgrims. The crew moves through the pre-dawn darkness in single file, their soft leather shoes making little sound on the ancient stone paving. Each man carries his weapons ready, but concealed beneath traveling cloaks, presenting the appearance of merchants or pilgrims should they encounter early risers on the road. Gunnar's scouting reports indicate the monastery maintains no significant military presence, relying instead on its isolated location and supposed divine protection for security. The monks' confidence in their god's guardianship typically ensures that Viking raiders achieve complete tactical surprise, overwhelming any resistance before organized defense can form. The monastery's walls rise before them as the eastern sky begins to lighten, the stone construction representing centuries of accumulated wealth and labor. Brother Thomas rings the bell for morning prayers, unknowingly providing the signal for the raiders' final approach. The Vikings scale the walls using rope and grappling hooks, their practiced movements revealing the efficiency born of numerous similar operations. Gunnar leads his men through the main gate, which opens from within as planned, the heavy wooden barriers swinging wide to admit the entire raiding force. The monks' dedication to their prayer schedule creates predictable vulnerabilities that experienced raiders exploit with ruthless precision, turning religious devotion into tactical disadvantage. The attack unfolds with swift brutality as the raiders spread throughout the monastery complex, each group assigned specific targets based on their previous reconnaissance. The chapel yields silver chalices, golden crosses, and elaborately decorated gospel books whose illuminated pages represent months of painstaking artistic labor. The scriptorium contains not only finished manuscripts, but also the precious materials used in their creation: vellum, exotic pigments, and gold leaf that commands high prices in Scandinavian markets. The workshops provide iron tools, bronze fittings, and half-finished metalwork that demonstrates the monks' considerable craftsmanship skills. Most valuable of all, the monastery's treasury holds silver coins, jewelry donated by wealthy patrons, and religious relics whose precious metal settings can be melted down for their raw material value. The monks offer little physical resistance, their religious training emphasizing prayer and submission rather than martial skills. Those who survive the initial assault find themselves bound with rope and herded into the chapel, where they kneel in terrified prayer while the raiders systematically loot their life's work. Brother Thomas, the elderly abbot, attempts to negotiate for his community's lives by revealing the location of additional hidden treasures, his desperation overcoming decades of spiritual training. The Vikings show neither particular cruelty nor mercy, treating their captives with the practical indifference of men engaged in necessary work. Some monks will be selected for slavery, their literacy and craftsmanship skills making them valuable commodities in Scandinavian markets, while others will be left alive to rebuild the monastery and accumulate fresh wealth for future raids. The systematic plundering continues throughout the morning as the raiders evaluate each item for its portability and value. Heavy stone sculptures remain untouched, while precious metals and fine textiles disappear into leather sacks, carried by designated crew members. The monastery's livestock provides fresh meat for the return voyage, while barrels of ale and preserved foods supplement their traveling rations. Gunnar personally examines the illuminated manuscripts, recognizing that wealthy collectors in Dublin and York pay premium prices for such elaborate religious artwork. The raiders' efficiency reflects years of experience in evaluating and transporting stolen goods. Their selection process, guided by practical considerations of weight, durability, and market value, rather than any appreciation for the item's artistic or religious significance. By midday, the wave strider sits low in the water under the weight of accumulated plunder, the crew's careful distribution ensuring proper trim and stability for the return voyage. 15 captured monks huddle in the ship's center, their hands bound and their faces reflecting the shock of men whose entire worldview has been shattered in a few hours. The younger captives will adapt to slavery and potentially earn their freedom through skilled labor, while the older monks face uncertain futures in an alien culture that values practical skills over theological knowledge. Gunnar orders the ship launched as the tide reaches its peak, the favorable wind and current promising swift passage back to Norwegian waters. Behind them, smoke rises from the monastery's wooden buildings, set ablaze to prevent their use by any military force that might pursue the raiders. The return voyage passes without incident as the heavily laden longship makes steady progress across the North Sea's familiar waters. The crew's mood reflects satisfaction with their successful expedition, the valuable cargo ensuring prosperity for their families through the coming winter months. Conversation turns to the division of spoils and plans for future raids. The men's casual discussion, treating violence and theft as routine occupations rather than extraordinary events. Young Bjorn examines a jeweled cross with obvious fascination, his first major raid having opened his eyes to the wealth that exists beyond their fjord's narrow confines. The captured monks remain silent, their prayers barely audible above the sound of wind and waves as they contemplate their uncertain futures in the pagan lands that await them. The familiar coastline of Norway appears on the fourth day, the distinctive profile of their home fjord triggering anticipation among the weary crew. Smoke signals from the watchtowers announce their return to the settlement, ensuring that families and neighbors gather at the shore to witness their homecoming. The wave strider glides between the protective headlands as Gunnar guides her toward the beach, the ship's deep load requiring careful handling to avoid grounding on the rocky bottom. Children splash into the shallow water to help drag the vessel onto its wooden rollers, their excited voices mixing with the adults' questions about the expedition's success. The sight of bound captives and bulging cargo sacks provides immediate evidence of the raid's profitability, ensuring that Gunnar's reputation as a successful war leader continues to grow among his peers. The formal division of spoils takes place in the settlement's meeting hall, where Gunnar presides over the careful distribution of wealth according to established custom and each man's contribution to the expedition's success. The ship's owner receives 1/3 of all proceeds, while the remaining 2/3 are divided equally among the crew members who provided their own weapons and equipment. Thralls and younger men who served as rowers receive smaller shares, but even these portions represent significant wealth for individuals with limited resources. The captured monks are evaluated like any other commodity, their skills and apparent health determining their value in the slave markets of Dublin and Hedeby. This systematic approach to wealth distribution ensures that successful raids benefit the entire community while maintaining the social hierarchies that define Viking society. Gunnar's own share includes silver arm rings weighing nearly 2 pounds, a jeweled sword taken from the monastery's altar, and 3 illuminated gospel books whose artistic merit makes them suitable for trade with wealthy collectors in the Irish ports. His reputation for successful leadership ensures that experienced warriors will compete for positions in his future expeditions, while younger men seek his guidance in developing their own raiding skills. The wealth accumulated through this single voyage exceeds what most European peasants might see in their entire lifetimes, demonstrating the enormous profitability that drives Viking expansion across the known world. Yet this prosperity comes at the cost of constant danger, with each expedition carrying the risk of death, capture, or loss at sea that makes raiding a young man's occupation. The celebration feast that evening brings together the entire settlement in acknowledgement of the successful raid's contribution to their collective prosperity. Astrid wears her finest jewelry and a new silk headscarf, purchased with her husband's profits, while the children listen wide-eyed to stories of distant lands and exotic treasures. The hall fills with the smoke of roasting meat and the sound of skaldic poetry commemorating the raiders' achievements, the verses ensuring that their deeds will be remembered long after the participants have joined their ancestors in Valhalla. Mead flows freely as the warriors recount their adventures, each telling embellished with dramatic details that transform routine violence into heroic saga material worthy of preservation in the community's oral traditions. The captured monks huddle in a corner of the hall, their alien presence serving as living proof of the raid's success, while highlighting the vast cultural divide between their Christian worldview and their captors' pagan beliefs. Brother Thomas attempts to engage his captors in theological discussion, his scholarly training unable to accept that learned men might reject his faith's obvious truths. The Vikings regard their prisoners with curious indifference, seeing them as valuable property rather than fellow human beings deserving of moral consideration. This fundamental difference in worldview reflects the broader cultural conflicts that drive the Viking expansion, as Scandinavian warriors encounter and exploit the wealth created by Christian civilization while remaining largely immune to its spiritual appeals. As autumn approaches, Gunnar begins planning his next expedition, studying reports from other raiding crews and evaluating potential targets along the coasts of Scotland and Ireland. the seasonal rhythm of Viking life alternates between summer voyages and winter preparations, each raiding season building the wealth necessary to survive the harsh northern climate. His growing reputation attracts followers from neighboring settlements, men eager to share in the profits generated by his tactical skill and leadership abilities. The success of individual war leaders like Gunnar drives the broader pattern of Viking expansion, as profitable raids encourage larger expeditions and the establishment of permanent bases in conquered territories. What begins as seasonal piracy gradually evolves into conquest and colonization, fundamentally altering the political landscape of medieval Europe. The monastery's reconstruction begins even before the raiders disappear beyond the horizon, the surviving monks driven by religious duty to restore their devastated community. Their letters to other religious houses describe the attack in vivid detail, contributing to the growing European awareness of the Viking threat, while inadvertently providing intelligence that helps future raiders identify wealthy targets. The cycle of raid and reconstruction creates a perverse symbiosis between Viking warriors and their Christian victims, each group dependent on the other for their continued existence. The monks' determination to rebuild ensures that wealth continues to accumulate in isolated religious communities, while the Vikings' need for portable riches drives them to seek new targets as familiar ones become depleted or better defended. Winter's approach brings an end to the raiding season as storms make sea travel too dangerous for profitable expeditions. Gunnar spends the dark months maintaining his weapons and equipment while planning future voyages, his reputation ensuring a steady stream of visitors seeking his advice on navigation, tactics, and target selection. The wealth accumulated through summer raids supports not only his immediate family, but also the craftsmen, farmers, and traders, whose skills enable the entire community's survival. The interconnected nature of Viking society means that successful raiders like Gunnar serve as economic engines driving prosperity throughout their settlements, their dangerous profession providing benefits that extend far beyond their immediate crews. The long winter evenings provide time for the careful maintenance of weapons and equipment that raiding requires, each piece of gear representing a significant investment in the tools of professional violence. Gunnar works by firelight to repair his mail shirt, replacing damaged rings with new ones forged by the settlement's blacksmith using iron captured during previous raids. His sword receives particular attention, the pattern-welded blade cleaned and oiled to prevent rust while its leather grip is re-wrapped to ensure secure handling during combat. The systematic care of military equipment reflects the Vikings' understanding that their lives depend on the reliability of their weapons, making maintenance a matter of survival rather than mere preference. As spring returns and the ice melts from the fjords, Gunnar begins assembling his crew for another raiding season, the cycle of violence and profit that defines Viking life resuming with the lengthening days. New recruits replace those who died during the previous year's expeditions or chose to retire from the dangerous profession, while veterans return eager to add to their accumulated wealth. The Wave Strider receives fresh tar and repairs after her winter storage, the ship's condition carefully inspected to ensure seaworthiness for the voyages ahead. The familiar ritual of preparation connects Gunnar to countless other Viking warriors across Scandinavia, all making similar preparations for another season of raids against the wealthy but poorly defended targets that dot the European coastline. The life of a 9th century Viking raider like Gunnar Eriksson reveals a world where violence and domesticity intertwined in ways that modern minds struggle to comprehend. These were not the savage barbarians of popular imagination, but skilled professionals operating within a complex society that valued craftsmanship, poetry, and family bonds alongside martial prowess and the accumulation of wealth through warfare. Their raids represented calculated business ventures rather than random acts of violence, each expedition carefully planned to maximize profit while minimizing risk. The prosperity of Viking settlements depended entirely on this seasonal cycle of violence, creating communities where the successful practice of piracy and slavery supported sophisticated cultures that produced remarkable achievements in art, literature, and exploration. In understanding their world, we glimpse a time when survival demanded skills and moral compromises that reveal both the harsh realities of medieval life and the remarkable adaptability of human societies facing the eternal challenge of wresting prosperity from an unforgiving world.